And we are rolling with the amazing and fabulous Miss Beck. Thank you for coming back again.
You're welcome. I'm still here.
Nobody can get rid of you.
I know. Well, the ex did, but
Oh, well, they don't count. No, I'm kidding.
I
And
know.
so, welcome back, everybody. I am here with Cheryl Beck, who is on part 5 of her dream of reading line by line the Green Bomb speech. Cheryl, just for the people who have not seen the first couple, can you just say a little bit about what the Green Bomb speech is, a little bit about you, and the warning we've been giving to everyone before we begin?
Sure. The Green Mom speech was given by a psychologist named Dr. Corey Hammond in 1992 to a crowd of hypnotherapists and psychotherapists. And he is exposing the programming going on in the SRA MK Ultra community. Most of the children in my generation, 1950s, 60s, 70s, were bloodline children that were put into MK Ultra. So when he's finding this same level of programming in all these different patients, you have to consider that most of them were probably in MK Ultra 2 when it's just what he's talking about SRA patients, and they haven't gotten to that level yet of the programming. So it's a certain programming called green programming, and green bomb means green tree in German. They found it connected, this type of programming that's put into the victims is connected to the Kabbalah tree. So that's where you get the tree part, and it uses Greek letters of the alphabet to put certain alters under each category, alpha, beta, delta, and so on. And so he is speaking to this audience and revealing that he's been doing double-blind studies and calling psychotherapists all over the nation and Canada and around the world. And they're finding that they have the same set of alters classified under the same Greek letter, and they have the same jobs. And that they can help these people deprogram and sometimes erase the whole programming altogether. So this was groundbreaking news. He spoke about it once. He had his life threatened before this, but I think they probably told him they were going to invoke the draconian law against him, which is they kill your family first. And so he never spoke about this speech again. He wouldn't answer questions about it again. God bless him for what he did, because I always refer people who want to know about MK Ultra programming, SRA programming, to this speech because it uncovers so much. So I was born in 1961 into a bloodline family, and I was put into MK Ultra when I was 4. Programming had already started in the family when I was 2. But yeah, I was put in MK Ultra officially when I was 4.
Well, we're glad you made it out alive. And one of the things that I had asked you last week that I thought was really profound is that you estimated there were possibly up to 30 million people that have been programmed to date that are kind of alive and running around the US, or is that more globally? I think we talked about US. Oh, it's global. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Well, it depends on the country. And you have to think more the Western world where the CIA is very prominent.
Sure.
So Australia, I knew a survivor from Australia that had the same sexy Sadie programming I had under the beta category of sex slaves. And it was a man, by the way. So I've known other survivors in Australia that this program absolutely goes across to. UK is another good one because they have their own source of all this evil, and that's Tavistock Institute. So,
And it's gone beyond bloodline families as well, right?
right.
Okay. That's what
It's
I
going to, the MK Ultra has continued, and their MK Ultra-ine, they're programming the mass populace of the globe right now through TV, movies,
education.
music videos, music, education, which is more indoctrination than anything else these days. And it was effective. We saw its effectiveness in the last 3 years as far as the mind control and the brainwashing
Mind
and
blowing.
how people fall to fear.
Right. And then just so anyone that's joining us knows, Cheryl is very open to kind of a free flowing format. So if anyone has questions, we will interrupt her and we will ask questions because it makes it a lot more unexpected. It just kind of like, I love it.
I love it. We're just having a chat.
Yeah.
And I love answering people's questions. I really do.
Yeah.
When our book first came out, I was the only spokesperson really for the book, and I did interviews for a year. Unfortunately, 85% of them were hostile because it was 2001.
So everybody thought you were lying.
Oh yeah, they wouldn't hear anything bad about the government.
The government.
And
Oh,
yeah.
I was in love with them. I fell right for it. So crazy. It's embarrassing, actually. How could I be so blind? And so it brings up another question because that Fritz Springmeier, he wrote quite the book with Cisco Wheeler. And is he still active? Like the guy that spoke about this green bomb speech, you know how you said he just fell off and just won't talk about it anymore. Does Fritz still talk about it?
From time to time, he does.
Okay.
Now they framed him. He lost his family. He lost his profession. He went to prison. They framed him, and that happened.
Wow. Can you tell that a little bit of that story, or do you want to just get going with what you were going to get with the green bomb speech?
I can't remember what they framed him with. It was some type of fraud. Okay, and Cisco Wheeler was with him for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
She was a Mother of Darkness programmer. They got through her programming altars before she left, but they didn't get through the whole system. And so the book came out of their work, and they were trying to help others too.
Sure.
And unfortunately, she allegedly got re-abducted into that system again. So anyhow, I'm just going to use alleged because I don't know,
Sure.
but that was
the story.
Well, it was a firsthand knowledge, somebody that was in their circle, so to speak. So whether, she got out again, I don't know that. And as with
Does
everybody,
Fritz still work with her or work with anyone? No, he just periodically talks.
People still interview him on the work he did.
Okay.
But he's very protective now of his life and his family and children. And so he does rare interviews, and you can find them, watch them.
Yeah. So there's Lisa in here, and she's asking, I did an MRI. My head became very hot, like a hot battery. Can that be a sign of implants? I know you're supposed to take off jewelry and stuff.
MRIs, they were so long ago. I think a regular MRI can make your head hot just because it's magnetism. Mm-hmm. And the power of that magnetism will definitely make your blood cells speed up and things like that. So not necessarily. Now, when I had my MRIs, I had acute pain exactly where that implant was. Hyper acute pain, and it lasted for days. So if you think about the magnetic resonance of a MRI machine, it's going to make any metal in there vibrate.
Right.
And so mine is encased in a bone, and it's vibrating in that bone and causing a lot of pain.
Or inflammation or whatever. And then this is so fun because we're having questions before we're even beginning. So somebody else said that they are an MK Ultra survivor, recovering memories in the last several years with the Lord, along with prayer and walking with the Lord. I love that one. Do you have any other recommendations to help recover more memories? Thanks, Linda.
To recover memories, I didn't have to recover memories. They all came back in a flood. And since she's walking with the Lord, I would say, ask the Lord to only give you what's important for you to remember.
So
that
good.
Changed your worldview of yourself, of others, of this world. For instance, I have a problem believing that I'm not enough. I'm never enough, not good enough, because I was an expendable. I have to fight that still. Where that came from was proving to me that I was, worthless in the programming, things like that. So only ask for what you need to change and reframe and realize where it came from, and always ask Jesus to come in and reframe that memory with you.
Mm-hmm. That's so good. And you are more than enough. You are so intelligent. You are so delightful to be around and to interact with and to have as a friend. Because I would consider us friends now, not just people that work together. And then two, like you have so much value. You have such a caring heart that wants other people to go through this journey, but to do so carefully and to do so wisely, to be smart about it so you don't get caught back into it. Because it seems like there's so many deep and dark ones that are running people right back around and in.
Right. Yeah. The whole thing of safe therapists. Who do you turn to? And I lost, my advisors who could do that. They're with Jesus now. 1, 2, 3, they're gone. And so it's hard knowing who's safe and who's not.
Yeah. And that's where discernment comes in. And that's where, to me, it becomes more and more simple. If someone's trying to scare you, if somebody is, even like, I hadn't really thought about it. We were exchanging stuff on Twitter today, and we had seen something about the war. I don't want to say things that'll get YouTube triggered, but you made a comment about all I see when I see that is demons. And I loved that you said that, because I started thinking about like anyone that gets involved in either end of any argument. There's responsible. I mean, we're all complicit in our own lives, and we really have failed at teaching people the fruit of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love, and ended up programming everybody wrong.
Yeah, throw the word out, and where are you? Throw prayer out of school. What do you get? And the word. Hang on to the word. Immerse yourself in the word. Hang on to the word.
Amen. That's good advice. All right, so we're ready for the green bomb speech. I'm gonna put a link to the PDF in the chat. If you give me a minute, and then you can get started, young lady, if you'd like.
Okay. Well, if you ran off the 19-page copy of the speech, we're on page 13, about halfway down.
You know what? I'm going to get that one, because that's the one that you, I think, sent me. So I'm going to pull that one, and then I'll put that in there. So give me a minute, guys, but she can get started.
Basically, they've asked Dr. Hammond again if there's risk to patients. I mean, there's always risk to the patients, but risk to the therapist in deprogramming and going through this. And we covered this earlier, and the therapists were really, I can see this group of people just bugging out about, wait, they're assassins and they're killers, and what about the safety? And so he's reiterating again back to risk. I know of no therapist who's been harmed. So there's one thing about alters. They have a job to do. And the late Valerie Wolf, who was a psychotherapist that had patients that testified before Congress with her there, she always said, just tell an alter they did a fantastic job scaring you. They don't need to do that job anymore. And, they can hand you the weapon and we can do something fun together. Because normally they're children that are playing a part of an assassin. And, I've carried that with me. It works. It absolutely works. It worked in my healing to give them a suggestion of retiring from their bad job and just being a child and playing. So he says there is a future time when we could be at risk of being assassinated by patients who've been programmed to kill at a certain time. Anyone that they've told and any member of their own family who's not active. So again, it's the draconian law kind of thing where they'll kill everybody around you before they attack your family. So, everybody's at risk. If that would come about is speculative. Who knows for sure? Maybe I don't think it's entirely without risk. A question in the back. He takes another question from the back.
And hold on one second, Cheryl. I couldn't find the one that you are doing. So the one I sent that's in the chat, we are on page 19 right now of 28.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, it's no problem. We're chill here. Everything but the temperature. Can I whine? All right. A question from the back. It seems to me that there seems to be some similarity between these kinds of programming and those people who claim that they've been abducted by spaceships and have had themselves physically probed and reprogrammed and all of that sort of thing. Since Cape Canaveral is across the Florida peninsula from me, and I don't think that they've reported any spaceships lately, I was just wondering, is there any sort of relationship between this and that? Dr. Hammond replies, I'll share my speculation that comes from others, really. I've not dealt with any of those people. However, I know a therapist that I know and trust and respect, who I've informed all this a couple of years ago and has found it in a lot of patients and so on, who is firmly of the belief that those people are in fact ritual abuse victims who have been programmed with that sort of thing to destroy all their credibility. If somebody's coming in and reporting abduction by a flying saucer, who's going to believe them on anything else in the future? Also a kind of thing that can be pointed to and said, this is ridiculous as that. So it's a discrediting kind of thing. I have to agree with Dr. Hammond's speculation there that they are ritually abused or MK Ultra programmed. And because they tried it with me to convince me that there was a spacecraft landing that was going to abduct me, and I didn't fall for it. And so they didn't go down that path with me. But in the group of survivors I was with, they absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, believed they were abducted. Absolutely. And I have heard stories now of people who know that we do have craft in the US, right? And they do abduct, but they do it to program or reprogram, injure, experiment on. It's us. It's not somebody out there coming to run experiments on us. They have things called screen programs that will make you think that those were aliens when they were people. And I just absolutely agree that that his speculation was right on, that they are SRA,
Yeah.
because the things that they do are so much of the MK experiments.
It's so similar. Well, I had Joseph Jordan on, and he spent something like 30 years looking at all of these abductions and these spaceship things, right? And after 30 years, or after about 25 years, he started putting it together that anyone who would protect themselves through Jesus or through prayer, they would disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I thought was fascinating. If anyone wants to watch that show, it was really good.
Yeah, and that's the other side. Besides us having our own craft,
Demonics.
and yeah, demonic. Excuse me. And yes, people that become Christians, become born again, filled with the Spirit, are discipled. Those abductions immediately stop. And I remember the story of a pastor who was laying in bed one night and he started floating sideways out of his bed. And he went through the wall, so he realized he was in the spirit, right? Because you don't just float through the wall if they're taking you bodily into a craft. And he could see a craft outside, so that's all spiritual. So he just rebuked it in Jesus' name, and found himself laying in bed. And it
And
never
he found
happened.
himself back in his bed. Wow. Yeah, and he was saying that at first he wasn't well received because he used to go speak at all these seminars about UFO craft, and now he's telling a story that nobody wanted to hear. Because there's a lot of people that have built entire incomes around that, and there's a lot of channeling and a lot of very dangerous and wicked things that are attached to it.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things that for me it goes down into it's either a spiritual attack or it's the cabal. I mean, it's
the tree, so to speak. So someone had a question. I have a 2-year-old grandchild, and for the first time ever, I guess he's been programmed. There is nothing I can do about it as the parents are completely unaware of being in a cult. Any advice?
What are the signs?
I'll ask. You just asked. So VC Klein, if you would like to tell us what some of the signs are, because 2's young to notice that, right?
Yeah, unless they're like I was at 2, extremely intelligent, very verbal, but
Right.
there was no way. The trauma that they used to shut me up was so horrific that there was no way I would be talking. So, yeah, where is he being programmed, or she, and what are the signs?
And so, depending on what signs she shares, if she's still here, would you have different answers?
Well, if the parents are just happily unaware, I'd risk my life to talk to them. I'd take that risk and, make them aware of what's going on. I mean, I'm a grandma. I would do everything in my power to wake them up and get them to hear me.
So what her answer was disassociation that she can recognize in the eyes, like being absent.
That's all. It's just trancing out. Then because
Sounds like
okay,
it.
I'm also a retired RN with pediatrics, and so that could be an absent seizure too. Have the child checked for absent seizures or something, because with vaccines and everything else that go on, I I shouldn't just point to that. I mean, everything in our environment is holding toxins and poisons at this point,
For
and it
sure.
messes with the nervous system. So I'm not going to just point to
Yeah, sure. Sure.
that. But
I know these are just opinions and we, are just sharing. And so she said she has already tried talking to them and there's no way she's getting through. My guess is she knows where they go to church or where they're associated. And maybe that's why she thinks that. It is a tough situation. And in a
it
way,
is.
you're there because you have family that's still involved.
Right, that my grandchildren are not in contact with.
Thank goodness.
So, well, I mean, not in physical proximity to by a long shot, but there has to be more signs. Was there an abrupt personality change? Do they draw, color weird things? Are there tantrums? Are there, interruptions in their personality? Because there were in mine. It's just my mom was programmed not to see it.
Sure.
So therefore, I would go at it from God,
Yeah.
point, spiritually, and pray, intercede, and ask if that is happening, that it becomes very obvious.
No, I think that's the best advice at this point. And I have seen God get people out of the most precarious things that I thought, I don't know how this is going to work, but they've got the faith. And I mean, hooks in deep from some bad, bad, bad people. And they just walked into the light. It was wild.
Right. And always pray confusion in their camp too, because they confusion in their camp, they expose themselves. Have them, if that's what is actually going on, have them trip up, have them expose themselves, have older kids say something in that situation. There's a lot that God can orchestrate. I've been through trials with one of my adult children this past year, and I've seen God do the most incredible, only God could think of it, above what you can ask or think, of how to straighten out this horrible situation that's going on where his life was at risk, right?
I'm telling you, I've seen it too. It is literally mind-blowing because I felt like I had worked out in my own mind all the ways that this guy could get out of this situation, and I couldn't think of one. And God just like, whoop, oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Oh yeah, he's done that all year, with the one son who's been through such trials. And then the other one, I don't know, was, God's doing something and it'll get all fixed.
So much of it is just you as the mother holding that faith. And so she can, as a grandmother, hold the faith because it is a direct line.
Right. And go in there with warfare. This is my inheritance from God. And so, you go to spiritual warfare for that child and, break any, demonic holds. Ask God to reveal you the source of why he or she trances out, like I said, because, we have my grandson was injured by, and so we've been through a lot of organic problems, like that with him until, we started healing him. So
There's always a way.
There's a way, and man, I would fast and pray and go at it spiritually and document when you see it. Take a video.
Keep track of it.
Right.
That's good. All right, we can continue on.
Yeah, I just feel for it.
I know.
I wish I could help more.
No, she said thank you, or he. It's VC Klein. I'm assuming it's a woman, but I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, grandchildren are so precious. It just I have to pause a second, because that fills my life right now. So
Yeah.
I have a little one too. Okay, back to all right. So we're talking about abductees, and this is Dr. Hammond talking. All I know is that I recently had a telephone consult with a therapist where I had been instructing her about some of this kind of stuff. When we were consulting at one point in the fifth or sixth interview, she said, "By the way, do you know anything about this topic?" And I said, "Well, not really," and shared with her what I shared with you. I said if it were me being with this guy that she'd been seeing for a couple of months, I said I would ask inside for the court to take control of finger signals. And we've talked about the finger signals. He's using hypnosis with these patients, so he asks for the core, and if a finger comes up, then that is present. And inquire about alpha, beta, delta, theta. She proceeded to do all that, got back to me a week later and said, "Boy, were you on target. There is a part inside named Dr. Green. There is this kind of programming." Now he takes another question. Yes? What's the difference between this kind of program and cult type abuse and satanic abuse in the kind of cults with the candles and the Dr. Hammond says this type of programming will be done in the cults with the candles and all the rest. So the candles, the cloaks, the pentagrams, that's what we're talking about. My impression is this is simply done in people where they have great access to them or their bloodline and their parents are in it and they can be raised in it from an early age. If they are bloodline, they are the chosen generation. That's not a true statement. There are ones that are chosen in the bloodline, and some of us are deemed expendables. So yeah, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be what they want to groom into, the higher levels of the hierarchy. If not, they're expendable. Oh, he says it in the next sentence. Sorry. They're expendable and they are expected to die and not get well. That was me. I was supposed to die. I had many NDEs as a child, and I just was not expected to live. There will be booby traps in your way if they aren't non-bloodline people, that when they get well, they will kill themselves. I'll tell you just a little bit about that. My belief is that some people that have ritual abuse and don't have this have been ritually abused, but they may be a part of a non-mainstream group. Satanism comes in the overall philosophy overriding all of this. So there it is. Again, these programmers, whether they're government or whether they're not, or whether they're an outside group of the Luciferians or AKA Illuminati, um, they're all Satanists and they all have one goal. It's like, just listen to what Klaus Schwab pontificates, from the WEF. It's clear as day what their goals are. People say, what's the purpose of it? My best guess is that the purpose of it is that they want an army of Manchurian candidates, tens of thousands of mental robots who will do prostitution, do child pornography, smuggle drugs, engage in international arms smuggling, do snuff films, all sorts of very lucrative things, and do their bidding. And eventually, the megalomaniacs at the top believe they'll create a satanic order that will rule the world.
I can't believe
Boom.
this was written in 1993. Gosh, it took me so long to figure it out.
Well, I had to wake up from my programming too. So I for a while there, I was asleep too. Anyhow, go back to the Satanic Order, New World Order, right? And they're working towards that goal. And hopefully we are aware of it and can do something about it at this point. That's what we saw the last 3 years was part of their agenda. And Russ Dizdar, he talked about a Black awakening where all these programmed people start acting out and, causing chaos in society and doing their jobs. And he really believed that was coming up very shortly, especially with the last 3 years. Of course, they took him out during that. So
Yeah, it's interesting too because Gina Phillips has talked about that some as well, about people even being programmed to take out their own parents, and then to meet up and go go do war with some militia or something. It's crazy. I mean, I'm not saying she's crazy. I'm saying like the programming
no,
is nuts. Yeah.
right. And I know what Gina's talked about certain groups that we saw come to the forefront and burn cities and things like that, and that they were part of that agenda. They were being triggered in those crowds. They're doing a lot of the mass stay out of crowds, stay out of swarms of people, because they're using frequencies and they're sending people among the crowds to incite and to trigger everybody that's been programmed. And when you look at some of the mugshots of, say, the rioters,
Oh my
we'll just say
gosh,
rioters,
they look so scary.
they look so scary, and their eyes are just the typical, absent mind control type eyes, and they let them out of jail and they go right back and they do their job again and
Amen.
again and again. So
Yeah. And then she had one more question: how to dissolve the suicide programs, kill switches, etc. when going ahead with deprogramming. Any recommendations? Did we talk about some of that like 2 episodes ago? Or no?
how they
Yeah.
erase the delta, not the delta, but the
Omega?
omega. Yeah, you
Yeah.
want to you
So
want
that was
to
part 3, I think.
yeah. So
But go ahead and go ahead and answer it too. I want to
yeah,
hear what you think.
I highly recommend it, do like I did and print off a copy of the speech and have it for reference. I have probably 7 of these floating around the house, so I never lose it. But they, Hammond talks about if you can find, the one in control, the switch that will turn it off, or you can find, there's like a hierarchy of the omega programs that you could switch off or erase and use the patient's imagination to do that, and have the robot set off a bomb to take out all the omega robots and so on. That can be done. So I would definitely check the speech out. And by the way, if you're a learner, it's also on YouTube with him speaking. So you can find
So
it
they
on
can
YouTube.
listen to it. And so do you recommend that people read it more than once?
I've read it so many times just as a reference point to when I was in it, when I was in that flood of memories and the programming was going off and there was constant for me. We didn't have any master switch to turn off for the omega programming. And so I was fighting it all the time because every time I had a memory, the suicide program would come up. And so looking at this kept me sane and figuring out that it was a code I would always hear, 4 sentences in a row. So you might as well kill yourself was the end one.
Right.
So when I felt these urges to just quit and hurt myself, I I'd go back to this and reread. It's a program. It's a program. No matter how strong it feels, it's a program. The other thing that was really helpful for me was that when you go through a trigger of the PTSD or a triggered altar, there's a wave that happens. And part of the wave is when you get to that suicidal point, you go up with a rage, anger, fear, whatever it is, and you go up this wave and you come down and it like goes below sea level, so to speak. And that's where you're at risk for the suicide and the self-harm and things like that. And having grown up on the beach, that wave goes down, and I knew if I would just go to bed, go to sleep, and ride it out, not do anything, just go to bed, that in 12 hours my body, the cells would, and the pathways would reorient themselves and return to homeostasis, where they're not firing off wrong in my brain, the neurons. And so by morning it would be all calmed down again, and that the urge would be gone, and then I could, talk to my therapist. And
it says joy cometh in the morning. Programmers forgot that part.
That can work, yeah. And the healing, why do you sleep? So you can heal, so that restoration can come. And
Exactly.
so I would typically, something would happen during the day and I'd hit that low point, home at night, because I was a mom and a wife and going to college all at the same time. And, when you're alone with yourself at night, that was the danger point.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And it is just frequencies coming in. I mean, well, they're in you, but when you think about what you went through in that wave, it's the exact opposite of faith, hope, love, because, even when you're going down, as someone who has faith, then you get into that hope slope. And then, you get back up when you remember that really your job is so simple. It's to hold on, to be the fruit of the Spirit, to be kind, to be gentle, to have self-control, to be patient. All of those things matter to the fruit that you deliver. So it is wild how it's almost exactly the opposite. So Miss Copeland said, all of my avatars were connected to demonic entities like Queen of Heaven, Leviathan. At what point do you deal with them?
Boy, I went through Deliverance before we ever delved into the therapy portion.
Mm-hmm.
So that was immediate for me, and Russ Dizdar, said the same thing, that the deliverance part was the easy part.
Mm-hmm.
You go through the deliverance and get those principalities and powers taken care of. You might not be aware of them yourself, if you're uncovering them as you go along. Then as soon as you uncover it, go through deliverance with, a tried and true deliverance minister you can trust.
Which is scary, because I wouldn't recommend anyone personally, because I would have to know them at their soul level. And I hate saying that publicly. And I know there's people out there that do it. I just think it's so dangerous, because if they are not of God, they can put you in a worse position. I did hear a guy, I would actually like to do a show with him, Gabriel Esteva or something like that. And he was, this is real quick, he was Satanist, and he came out with just Christ, literally just Christ. Christ said, if you believe as much in me as you do that they'll kill you if you leave them, then we win. All you have to do is believe more than that. And he just said that what it takes now, because he helps people, he's been doing it for 15 years, is stay in the Word, repent, give back everything that you traded. If you traded for something, to listen to good and beautiful music, and to pray. Did I already say pray? Pray, read the word.
Be the word.
And he said, saturate yourself in it until they flee. I thought that was great advice.
That's great advice. I was just, the transition for me was I was in pastoral counseling already for the molestation. And
with people you trusted.
Yeah, they still turned on me, when I got the memories back, which was so weird because we'd already done the deliverance, but it was because I went outside the church for therapy because he wasn't equipped, and there was a very dangerous counseling day for me when it all came to a head that he was not equipped to deal with this because he was giving me the wrong it was bad.
Wow.
So, because I went outside the church to get therapy from somebody, that was the cardinal sin. And it wasn't, I wasn't disrespecting him, as because, without him, I wouldn't have been through those deliverances, and they were powerful. Okay. But, and then the complete 180, since then. But as soon as you can deal with those, may I suggest follow the Lakes, Mary Lou Lake and her husband. They are good, trustworthy people. Mary Lou Lake, I forget her husband's name.
And Cheryl is co-signing on them. I'm not. I don't know them. I just want clarity.
Right. And, there are lay people that are fantastic deliverance ministry people, could be your, somebody that even doesn't even go to church because they can't be affiliated with stuff going on in the church. So there's help out there. There really is.
Just be very, very careful.
Yeah.
And do as much as you can on your own as well. Can't hurt.
Right. Okay, so where are we now?
She said, thank you for explaining it. And that was exactly how it worked for her. She says that was the easy part. The rest of 3 years was the hard part.
Yeah, that's why Russ Dizdar wanted to get in touch with me, because he said, I don't understand how you healed so fast, because it was 3 years. And he said the deliverance part is easy, but these altars, I mean, he had one manifest in his office that pulled a sword out of her pant leg, and was going to kill him and things. And it was taking so much time. And I realized that God sped it up a lot with what he revealed to me about I created all of these altars in the first place.
Right.
So according to their script. All right, now I found where I was. All right, the question is, you have suggested and implied that at some point at a high level of the U.S. government, there was support of this kind of thing. I know we're short of time, but could you just say a few words about the documentation that may exist for the suggestion? Dr. Hammond, there isn't great documentation of it. It comes from victims who are imperiled witnesses. The interesting thing is how many people have described the same scenario, and how many people that we have worked with who have had relatives in NASA,
military,
in the CIA, and in the military, including very high ups in the military. I can tell you that a friend and colleague of mine who has probably the equivalent of half the table space on that far side of the room filled with boxes of declassified documents from mind control research done in the past, which has been able to be declassified over a considerable couple of decades. and has read more government documents about mind control than anyone else, has a brief that has literally been sent in the past week and a half for all information to be declassified about the Monarch project for us to try to find out more. Okay, so what happened?
I
There
know.
was
We
a
can fast forward
mysterious
in the
fire.
story.
See, there was this mysterious fire in the basement of the CIA that involved George H.W. Bush and I think it was Alan Dulles. But this fire destroyed all that documentation of Project Monarch and the children. So, we can't produce it for FOIA, because can be produced. The only things that they really have been able to produce is follow the money type of things, and the names of projects and some methods, not the deep stuff, not the
Right.
horrible, terrible stuff, but oh yeah, we set up a prostitution house and gave the guys LSD and taped them to see what would happen, some of that stuff, the light stuff. But hopefully we'll be seeing that declassification, because it's got to be somewhere. I don't think it all burned. I just do not
Why
think it
did
all
they
burned.
keep it? You would think they would burn it as they do it. They'd be ashamed, but I guess they don't care. Oh,
The egos of these people, they are the elites. They are
demigods.
powered by,
They think they're gods.
right,
Yeah.
powered by Lucifer, and they're going to win, and everybody's cattle under their feet, and nothing. And, but they want the methods that produce something too, so they could go through there and look. And I'm thinking, it's on computer somewhere. It didn't burn, all of it. It just hasn't been
Oh, they
released.
probably have videotape, audio tape. When you think about it, I bet you they've got transcripts. I bet they've got everything.
Yeah, everything they need for blackmail for a long time. I mean, it's hard as a survivor to think that the films they made of me are still out there.
Yeah, you
And
don't know, do you?
pedophiles are enjoying themselves, for my torture and things like that. And it's just like, I can't think about that. I gotta just give that to God,
Mm-hmm.
and but yeah, so much videotaping, and their equipment was 20 years ahead of what we had in the public also. So recording
Michael
devices.
Jaco says the same thing. Like the stuff that the Navy SEALs had access to, it takes like 20 years to get to where they might be selling it in the real world.
Right. Yeah, it's a good standard. That is actually true.
Mm-hmm.
So. Now let me mention something about some of the stuff that my experience is in several patients now that you may run into late in the process. I know I'm throwing a lot at you in a hurry. Some of it is completely foreign, and some of you may think, gosh, could any of this be true? Just, ask, find out in your patients, and you may be lucky. And there isn't any of this. Somewhere at a deep level, you may run into some things like this. Let me describe to you, if I can find my pen, the system in one patient. One patient I had treated for quite a while, a non-bloodline person. We had done what appeared to be successful work and reached final integration. She came back to me early last year and said she was symptomatic with some things. I started inquiring. I found a part there we'd integrated. The part basically said there was other stuff that I couldn't tell you about, and you integrated me, and so I had to split off. I had done some inquiring about things like alpha, beta as a routine part of it, and found that they were there. And I said to this part, why didn't you tell me about this stuff? She said, well, we gave you some hints, but they went right over your head. Says, I'm sorry, but we know that you didn't know enough to help us, but now we know you can. So the stuff started coming out. It was interesting. In other words, that altar was one that was like a gatekeeper, and realized that even the therapist wasn't equipped again to help them heal. But as the process and time went on with him talking to other therapists. And the more they got to know, then they came back and said, oh, by the way, we're here. We just had to protect us until you got your act together, so to speak. She described the overall system, if I can remember it now, as being like this. The circle represented harm to the body, a system of altars whose primary purpose was to hurt her, including symptoms like Munchausen's, self-mutilation, other kinds of things. Each of the triangles represented still another different system. She said, with the exception of me, this one part, you dealt with the whole circle with the work that we did before, but you didn't touch the rest of the stuff. So in other words, he took a pen and he drew the matrix that they had this altar.
The Kabbalah tree matrix or her own matrix?
Well, my matrix was a diamond.
Oh, that's right.
Wasn't a Kabbalah tree with the facets. So
you think hers was just her own interior Stargate circle?
Was whatever they wanted her to visualize her system as being.
Oh, they choose it. Got it.
Yeah. That way, number one, they feel so smart doing that too, you know. But the other thing is, a lot of this gets individualized. So, especially with a high value person, you know, it gets really individualized. Okay, in the middle of all this was still another system consisting of the Kabbalistic tree. So she did have that, which some of you are aware looks approximately like this. So he's drawing it. You can look at it up with the circles and the lines and stuff.
Do you want me to pull one up while you're talking?
If you'd like to.
Sure.
So he draws it there as a rough approximation for his audience. That represented another system. Then once we got past that, she implied that this entire thing was somehow encompassed by what you call it an hourglass. I kept thinking we were at final integration, then I'd find some other parts. This person had an eagle eye husband that was watching for certain things that we found to be reliable indicators. Yeah, that's
actually the tarot cards, but they're using the same. That's wild.
They've got
the tarot cards are built from it.
That I didn't know. I don't know much about that.
Wow. All right, let me see. I'll find some other ones. Let's look here. Where's a good basic one? Here. Is that good? No, that's a book.
Well, you can see that colored one, the last one.
This one.
Yeah.
This one?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a simplistic view of what the Kabbalah tree looks like. So he's talking about that was inserted into an hourglass configuration where time's up or time's running out. And you have to, you know, get certain things done by a certain time. I had an hourglass, and it was basically telling me I would die at a certain age, you know, and it goes back to Wizard of Oz programming with Dorothy in the hourglass. You know, she was going to die from the Wicked Witch as the sand ran out. So that's also used in programming. They have certain deadlines they have to meet, and they think that they will die if they don't meet those deadlines with that. So, and then we talked earlier in earlier videos about the certain segments of that Kabbalah tree have names like wisdom and things like that. And they found altars by those names in the system. Okay, so often I would get evidence of dissociation within a few days. It would suddenly be picked up by the husband. You know, what we found was I continue to find evidence of dissociation, and then I'd find parts. Finally, this part, as I got angry with him and said, why, when I give you these idiometer inquiries, am I getting lied to? The part says, because you don't understand, you're going to get us all killed.
Right.
So that's the big fear is, if you tell, you're going to get killed.
Right. And so it does bring up question for me, because if people have face fronting personalities and that personality marries, then the person that they're married to perhaps doesn't know any of the other personalities at all, because
Right.
they've got a front. So when someone heals and they integrate pieces of themselves, they're now like whole and full, and they might not be a match anymore. Does that make sense?
That's what happened to me.
I didn't expect that answer. I don't mean to laugh.
The truth,
Wow.
and that's why I don't get really hard on my ex,
Yeah.
about, because the host, or face fronting, like you said, the host altar that he married had attributes that there is no way on God's green earth, you can attribute to me. Right. So he married a totally different person.
It'd be funny, like if you had like this really crazy, like, wild, sexy, like mama thing, and then when you integrated, you were like this little devout, sweet. What? That's not what I married. Or vice versa, just to be something extreme like that would be just like, whoa, what did I marry? It's like Freaky Friday.
Right. Well, basically, I was a doormat, and very, very emotional. Took a lot of verbal abuse I shouldn't have, and when when I was going through integration, then I couldn't do anything right anymore, because I was doing things
You
differently.
weren't compliant. How dare you not be compliant? Wow.
Right.
Yeah. I just didn't
Yeah.
even think of that until we were sitting there and you were describing that. And I'm like, well, that would be really difficult on a relationship, because it's almost like it's a different person. Like the person has dissociative identity disorder.
Right. Right. And that's why most marriages don't survive. When you're working and integrating those kind of things. Okay, so, I had beta sexual programming, so I could be really mama,
I can't see
and
you,
then
Cheryl.
that was expected all the time when that was just a part, right?
Right, right.
I couldn't just conjure that up, be waiting at the door every day, came home from work, you know? It didn't work that way, so it ruined the marriage, because I just,
Yeah, I'm
I
sorry
can't, I
that
can't do
happened.
that. I just can't be that person, and in my space right now and who I am, I can't be a wife. I
Right.
can't. It's just, it's not in me now, because I've been so strong, and things like that, and I just it's not something I even desire, to
Right.
date or anything like that. So it's just, I'm good with God and my dog and my
I can
children.
relate.
You know?
I can relate, and that didn't happen to me. So,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I guess we just go through different stages of life also as we
Yeah.
mature.
Yeah. And I feel like 120 years old. So lived a couple lifetimes there. Okay. How are we doing on time here?
Whenever you want to end, because I'm enjoying this, and I don't have to be anywhere. So when you get tired or your voice gets tired, let me know. Like you want to end it at like 4:30 or Eastern time or Central time. Like do
Okay.
another
So,
25 minutes.
Okay, I'll let you know. My battery is getting low. So
Okay.
I'll let
So
you know.
so we'll go until your battery is really low.
Yeah.
And if you disappear, we'll all say goodbye.
Okay. Hang on just one second here.
No worries. No worries. Thank you so much for doing this. This is great. Also, somebody was asking me if I've ever heard of Nathan Reynolds' story. He has a book called Snatched Out of the Flames. He was a bloodline and he was abused. I don't know that story, so I will look
It's
into
on
it.
Emma's. It's on Emma's channel.
Okay.
The Imagination
Yeah.
podcast on YouTube. Yeah,
Okay. He's
it's an
been on
incredible
there.
story.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard his story.
In fact, they're doing. She was going to do a book study, and that they were going to start with his book.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, so you can find those testimonies over there, and you can get his book.
Yeah. And then a couple of people have asked about being on this channel. I'm not doing it anymore, but going to Emma's channel or Chantal's channel would probably be the best route to go. Cheryl's my only girl. She's
The
my only
only
one.
one,
She's my only one.
only because I wanted to do the green bomb, you guys. Anyhow, all right. So he's this altar tells him you're going to get us killed um, uh, because he's finding this stuff. Number one, so they're afraid. We started talking, and then she basically said it's been programmed so that if you succeed and you think you've succeeded, you will fail. They build it in as a way to laugh at you, that if you ever get us integrated, we will die. So this goes to earlier in this podcast where we were talking about, if they do get integrated, suddenly they suicide. I unfortunately have known people in that group that I was in that happened to.
It's heartbreaking.
Fully integrated, and then it was absolutely mind blowing, and I was so stunned, so shocking.
It makes
After
you
all
wonder
that-
what percentage of suicides are actually programming. We'll
Or
find out
demonic.
someday.
Yeah. Here's what she said. This part said, I'm one of 12 disciples, and I've seen this in others, 12 disciples within the Hourglass, each of whom had to memorize a disciple lesson, which were basic satanic kind of premises. Philosophies of like be good to those who hurt you, hate those who are nice to you, on and on. There may be 2 or 3 sentences like that associated with each that they had to memorize them. In other words, these are the demonic copies of the 12 disciples of Jesus Christ, right? And so they have demonic philosophies and things to carry out. They said, we are like grains of sand falling, and when the last grain of sand falls, there's death. I said, is death a part? Yes, when the last grain of sand falls, the sleeping giant awakens. You hear these programming phrases coming out of her. The sleeping giant was death, who was then to kill them on day 1 or day 6 after awakening, unless certain things were followed. And we did some of those. So in other words, to deactivate the death part, he did things with her that she needed to do to keep that giant from dying. So, well, we also found death had a sister as a backup, used with mirrors to create the sister part. We had to get past and deal with that too. Death had certain things that they said had to be done to integrate. I started to say, oh, come on, they lied to you before. She said, wait a minute. This is what they said you'd say. They said that no doctor would ever believe that. They had to go to these extremes to get us well, and that's part of the reason they'd fail. I said, well, tell me again, tell me again, what they needed to do. She said, I have to be dressed all in red. I have to have Demerol on board, have taken Demerol. A code has to be given, and it has to be in a room that's totally dark. It has to happen on day 1 or day 6 after this part's been awakened.
Oh my
this is
gosh.
she's literally rehearsing to him now, telling him exactly, I have to have Demerol, I have to have, this.
Well, and what's wild to me as you're reading that, all I'm picturing is somebody working with a bad therapist, like someone that's in on it. And then this activates 6 to 7 days later, or 1 to 6 days later, when they're not in the office and they're not, a part of it. It's just so creepy to me.
Right. I mean, all these fail safes. And I would say again, I didn't have something as complicated as this because I was supposed to be of no value in the future.
Right. So they didn't need to protect you as deeply.
Right. It's like, Gina Phillips has worked with hierarchy kids, so that's on a whole different level. I said what I'd have to lose. I had a psychiatrist give her a little Demerol. We used the code. My office didn't have any windows anyway. It was pretty easy. Oh, and there had to be 4, I think, candles lit. Well, fine. So we did it and everything went well. Maybe it would have gone well if we hadn't done it, but I decided not to take the chance and to trust the patient. Well, so we go on and then we find another part. There's death and destruction. Another backup also with a sister that we had to get through. In fact, I think there were 2 backups there. Interestingly, the very last part was an extremely nice part, made especially that way so they wouldn't want to lose them because they would be so adorable and loving and so sweet that they wouldn't want to maybe get rid of them. Then we found that she continued to have these feelings with the last part left now of darkness and blackness inside. What did we find? A curtain.
Like the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, she sounds like she has Oz programming. Absolutely. She said they assumed that if you ever got to this point, you would. And by the way, we had encountered this stuff about the LSD stuff, the green bomb programming. The message was that she said, there is a curtain behind which are the remaining feelings and memories, but it can't be opened from the middle. It's like a stage curtain. It has to be opened this way. So stage curtains, you pull the pulleys and it comes across or goes up or however it's set up.
Yeah, or they go up.
Yeah, or they raise. They assume that you would try to deal with all the feelings that can't be opened until you've dealt with that last part and they've integrated. So far, it looks like we've got integration that's holding. So I found death and destruction in the hourglass in a non-bloodline person. So that's really interesting that they found it in a non-bloodline person. But again, if there's a person that has certain gifts, they go for stealing
recruiting
those
them,
and using them. The tree and the hourglass, this patient informed me, were made of sand because we were meant to die. We're expendable. We're the unchosen generation. And that's so counter to what she's just described about they put all these fail safes in so she wouldn't be expendable. I've heard variously that it's crystals or blood that fills the hourglass in bloodline people. By the way, you can do simple things like turn the hourglass on its side so nothing can fall out, so time stands still to be able to do certain kinds of work.
That's so clever.
Yeah. Spread the grains of sand on the seashore so they can't be numbered and the time will not be counted. Got that idea from a ritual abuse victim who had seen some of this kind of programming done that another therapist was seeing. So that's brilliant. I just smashed my hourglass. So, it was just like, no, I'm not going to die. You've already tried so many times. Okay, so there would be just a few other hints about things that may be helpful or meaningful. We're talking about very intensive things and at deep levels. To me, this gives us 2 things. One thing it gives to me is hope because it gets to material and it makes progress like nothing else we've ever seen before with these people who have it. The second thing it does for me, it demoralizes too, because although 3 years ago I had a pretty good idea about the extent and breadth of what they have done to these victims, I have no real appreciation for the depth and breadth and intensity of what they've actually done. So,
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. That's probably a good place to stop because it gives us 5 more pages for another one. Do you want to do
okay,
that?
sure.
Okay. And then does anybody have any questions for Cheryl before her battery dies?
You got one little sliver there. It's like,
Yeah. And so it makes me wonder about just time. Because I remember you saying that like you would go into something and then you would completely forget everything that happened and come back. Do you realize that time has gone, or is it almost like you go into this loop and you come back onto the timeline?
I'm thinking about my childhood when I was real DID. You think, okay, for instance, I think that I had a really good sleep because I didn't sleep well. You're hyper vigilant all the time. You're taken out of the house at night and everything. So I thought, man, I just went to sleep and the weekend's over. You know, it was just wait a minute, it's Monday. We're looking at the paper and going, you know, and you, but they talk about demoralizing you. They bring you down so much in your host personality that you think, okay, my dad's crazy, so I must be crazy. So I'm not going to mention this, and you just kind of go away from it. And a spin program will usually kick in and take you away from thinking about the lost time, how you got someplace. It just spins away and
Wow.
goes away. So, and I've told, you know, the combination to my locker story 100 million times. You know, go back to school, not remember where my classrooms were, you know, my locker combinations, go back to the office, and I'd hear it from the office too.
Yeah, they'd
Yeah,
be like, "Why can't you remember?"
I know. It's like the dumbest kid in school, you know, that's in the gifted program.
Yeah, which kid's here today? That's the question. And then somebody, let's see, somebody said, "What if someone has a relative in the 16th century that was a well-known warlock and called himself Satan?" I wonder who it was. 16th century. That's in the 1500s, right?
Right, 1500s. So they're wondering if they're bloodline or not.
Sounds like I don't know. Jay Noble, you didn't give us a specific question. So it says, oh, he said, or she, I had a stranger pray over me without knowing my last name. She broke off ties. So, oh, I guess he was wondering if he has ties, if he's not even aware of it or something. Faust, he said, is who he's connected to.
Usually when you find those in your history, the high warlocks and things like that, they're if they're not bloodline originally, they're adopted into a bloodline. That can happen too. And so if somebody was praying over you and came up with that as a word of knowledge and broke that off you, then that's tremendous. You know,
Right.
I would definitely, if I would take it to Jesus again and do some inquiry. Do, you know, are there things that I need to repent of on behalf of the family bloodline? You know, and I always do. I repent of the very first word, deed, action that there was bloodshed or a blood oath or blood sacrifice. You know, for my family. Please forgive me for my family.
Mhm.
You know, choosing that and from that until present, you know, remove that from my family and I. So,
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because once I got really serious about reading the Bible and repenting and just praying more and spending more time in the Word, I can't believe how much I have to repent for. Like stuff comes up out of nowhere. I'll be like remembering something. I'm like, oh my God, I did that too. And I'm just kind of blown away. So I can't even imagine trying to do it for, other lifetimes for ancestors. Like that's
yeah,
insane.
it's more repenting for the
Right.
act that goes against God. That's an antichrist action, you know, that
Right.
So
Yeah. And so Duke is asking about hypnotherapy. We talked about that also, I think, in either two or three, maybe even one. But I'm of the belief that that's a dangerous route to go. Cheryl was talking about how, well, I'm not going to speak for you. You speak for yourself.
I
What
so
are your thoughts
easily,
on it?
well, if you consider dissociation trancing, um, then I so easily just would just go into that and allow the altar to speak. Um, I wouldn't put myself in a hypnosis situation because they did it to me so often that I would easily go for anybody's talk down into hypnosis and be their puppet. So
Yeah. I remember listening to a hypnotherapist one time say that all hypnosis is self hypnosis. And even though somebody is suggesting things to you, you have to be the one that accepts it. And I know a lot of times in your case and with SRA, that is complete duress, that you're accepting that under. And so once your body and mind and spirit can access those places. I don't know what you'd call it, the second heavenly, or, wherever it is that we go when we dream or when we meditate or whatever. But I think we have natural protection if we're doing it, in the ways that God intended, whereas these people were using it, again, taking what God had created and contorted it and put you in these nightmares, even though you were lucid.
and
Yeah.
drugs were on board.
Well, and that's the other thing. Lots of drugs were involved. And so
Yep.
you're creating neural pathways on how to open that up. So I could see where you wouldn't even need hypnosis if you were so used to being able to access these different things on command or on request.
Right.
But you have to know to ask and for which ones, and it's crazy. Duke said this could be a whole show. Yeah, it could be a whole show. It really could. I was very interested in at one point in time, all of it, meditation, remote viewing, all of it. And I have denounced it all, and I don't believe we need any of it. We just need the living oracle, the word of God, and to spend time listening to him, you know?
Right. The Holy Spirit. I mean, um, boy, I'm hearing more and more, I'm hearing more and more. It's just simple things in daily life or,
So fun. I love it.
but you got to be quiet and have your, quiet times to be able to hear his voice clearly. So I would just
Yes.
go, go
And
with
whenever
Jesus.
I'm reading, it seems like every time I read the Bible, I get those hits, with the Holy Spirit. Something jumps out at me, um, or you're thinking about something, and then the answer comes in like the very next, thing that you read. It's just magical. And I know people don't like the word magical with God, but it's the way it feels to me. It feels like a miracle. Yeah.
Right.
It's cool. So thank you so much for coming.
You're
We beat
welcome.
your phone running out of battery.
It's my laptop and it's on battery saver right now.
All right. Well, thank you, Cheryl. And thanks for being here for part 5. It looks like there'll be at least one more. And so we'll just see how it goes. But hopefully this is helping people, and if you have questions we didn't get to this time, bring them next time. Cheryl loves the interruptions. She loves having the interactions. You can also find her on Twitter. If you could tell them your information on how they can reach you.
Right. Twitter is at CA Beck 1961. And the CA and the B for Beck is capitalized at CA Beck 1961. I don't think Twitter
I don't think it's case
is
sensitive.
case sensitive. So
Yeah, I think you're good. And then until next time, thank you so much. And we're so glad you're so valuable.
thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Love you guys.
Bye,
Thank you.
everybody. Have a great weekend.